LinkedIn Live, Hour of Empower. The word of the day is insurance. I'm so privileged and honored to have Kelly back. Kelly's always here, and the show wouldn't be what the show is without Kelly. And I'm so even more honored to have Tracy Riley here, who's a good friend and a connection on LinkedIn for about 3 years. And she actually is into the insurance industry. So, with that said, Kelly, why don't you bring everybody a little bit up to date and what your initial thoughts on insurance is? I hope chat's working. Yesterday it wasn't. So let's hope it works today. Kelly?
Yeah, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. And yeah, so insurance, interesting word for so many reasons, I guess like all words, but I think the quote that I put up by Ken Hubbard, and I hope I'm saying that correctly, was something to the effect of fun is like life insurance. The older you get, the higher the cost. And I kind of thought that was funny. And I was like, you've got to poke fun at insurance, right? I've done a lot of work. I actually was in insurance for a very, very brief period of time, but spent more time actually doing on the advertising side on the formulas of different brands. And it's interesting about insurance because the combination of what works, everybody's using the same thing if you look at it, whether it's, the Limu, Emu, Flow, everybody uses humor and how it saves you money. It's never about the actual insurance product because people don't like the fact that they have to have it. And it's not really interesting from a consumer perspective. So the advertising side is very interesting to see the formulaic portion of it, of why their ads work and why it makes people buy, because they're finding the humor and connecting, with a gecko, which has absolutely, and that story alone is very interesting on how the Martin organization or advertising agency put that whole thing together during the actor strike back in the day. And I don't even think they have insurance in the UK. So why does the Geico gecko have the accent? But it's because it's more attractive. So I thought that part, now that that's come up, is very interesting. And of course, I've had insurance in my family life my entire life, so I definitely know a lot about it, and it's very interesting and so multifaceted. But interesting on the advertising side. And we're so lucky and grateful to have you with us today, Tracy. So I will hand it over to you for a little introduction and your initial thoughts on insurance.
Hi, my name is Tracy Riley. I'm in South Florida. I work in the insurance industry in the financial services. Love to answer any questions you have. I specialize mostly in life insurance instead of auto and car. But I used to nurse my son to that Geico commercial, and he would go, "Froggy, zoom, zoom, zoom." Those were almost his first words.
Is that funny?
So it's a small world, yeah.
Yeah.
And I got into it to help and to serve.
Oh, that's great.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, we've got our first comments. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, I was worried there for a minute.
Yeah, well, yesterday we didn't have them, so it's nice they're coming through. So Ashif is here. Thank you so much for being here today. And Danny's here. Danny's out there in England. Great to see you. I saw your post earlier today. Danny's just fabulous. And, when I look at insurance, I look at safety.
Mm-hmm.
Protection.
Peace of mind. That's one thing you buy, you hope you never use, right? You never say at the end of the year, I'm too bad the house didn't burn down and we paid off all that insurance, right? And I think that's what people need to have more of, especially in today's busy world, is a little bit of safety, a little bit of, support.
Yeah.
And that's why these conversations can be so valuable, because it gives people a chance to express their own views about things, but reserve judgment, knowing that there's different ways of seeing and using words. So Danny says, No insurance needed here. I plan to live so far.
He'll pass on his wealth to his next generation through tax-free insurance.
Yeah, well, it never hurts. Well, Cheryl's from India here.
Hey,
Blessings. So nice to see you, Cheryl.
yeah.
So, Kelly, we're getting a pretty good lift off here with everybody's different contribution to insurance. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think just when you said, protection, and that's what most people I think associate it with, right? And it is interesting because I'm pretty sure when I was younger, I didn't have any, like, who cares? I don't need insurance. I don't want to pay that. Or why does anybody need to pay that? Um, but it's usually due to having some kind of, life experience that makes you go, now I see why. My father was killed very tragically when I was a teenager. And my mom had been a stay-at-home mom with my brother and I. My brother was in college, and she was terrified of, like, what am I going to do? And thankfully, with insurance, she was able to continue her life and not have to stress on those things. So I definitely have a different perspective of the importance of protecting your family. You never want to talk about those things because they seem so morbid, but it's, like you say, Don, like, none of us are getting out of here alive, and we never know when that's going to be. And it really is a smart thing to plan and look into. So of course, I do probably have a deeper understanding than a lot of people because I was in it for a bit, insurance, but then I really was more drawn to the financial services and the investment side of the business. So I ended up turning that route and really got into alternatives and those sorts of things. But it is interesting because there's so many misconceptions, I guess, and there's a lot of bad products out there. And yes, and it matters to know somebody, I think, and like Tracy said, if you have questions, ask the tough questions, and know that somebody is extremely educated in it, because there are so many different facets and things involved in even what policy makes the most sense for you right now in your life, because your policy needs, and I don't want to get into this, isn't my specialty, but they definitely change over your life, right? They're not the same when you're in your 20s as they are when you're in your 50s. So yeah, this is definitely going to be interesting, and it brings back a lot, but I think it's a smart conversation for people to have and go, you know what? We need to have a conversation as a family. I have a dear friend who I do some work for, and he's also insurance, but he focuses on Medicare. And he recently had a heart attack, and thank God is fine. But boy, he's reevaluated absolutely everything and how the importance of it. And here he's a pretty strict, has things buttoned up anyways. But it was a good time to really take a step back and reevaluate where you do have your investments and such. So, life tends to smack us in the face sometimes and makes us go, I need to look at things, or I am looking at things a little bit more different now.
So it's a small world. I had a very similar experience with my father. He died when I was 5, and he was a massive heart attack at 42. 3 months before that, he had bought insurance, and they had done all kinds of tests, and he was fine. And it changed my life. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And we got to move out of our tiny town, and my sister and I got to go to school and have clothes, and we went from lower class to middle class, all because my dad thought ahead to get insurance, not knowing what was going to happen.
Right.
So
it's interesting because I think my dad at the time too had just recently upped something. It's interesting how you can look back at all the things that fell into a place for a reason, and you never really know. And that made me, and I'm sorry, I'm interjecting here. It reminded me of another story. I have a stepfather that's been in my life for, good Lord, almost 30 years now. And he is in insurance, or he's retired now. He was in insurance for 45 years. one of his very first policies was his father. And that was the first policy he ever paid out because his father was in a very tragic accident on the ranch. So same thing though. If he hadn't had the policy, his mom she would have had to sell. And so it's just interesting how when you look back sometimes on those things, how interesting how things were taken care of beforehand. So he's part
Almost
of the plan in
predestined.
some way.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's where a reevaluation of circumstances, because it really just comes down to risk and reward.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How much can you self-insure and feel
Mhm.
comfortable, and how much do you feel uncomfortable about? And it's really that comfort level that you're buying, because to buy half what you need, knowing you don't have enough, now you're just half at risk. Why be at all at
Right
risk?
off of part of that elephant than to get the whole thing if you can't afford it. It's better to
Yeah.
get some protection than none.
Oh, for sure. But not to fool oneself to think that half is whole, And I think the other thing is insurance comes in more than just policies and documents, right? It's like, who's your backup group? Who's your family and friends?
Who's
Mhm.
writing the check?
Yeah,
Because you really need to look at the company and not who you're signing your check to, but who's signing a check to you.
yeah,
A lot of them will resell them.
yeah. I mean, it's a big business, and like any big business, trust means everything,
It
because
does.
whoever your agent is, and that's a good word, agent, they're supposed to be an advocate for you, right?
Yes, we have to be.
That's right. They're supposed to be looking after you, and obviously knowing more than you know or should know, and helping you make the right decision, right? Because it's in everybody's benefit for the buyer to be satisfied.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's when you get referrals, and that's when you get renewals, and that's how people could live off of their book after a while. If you've been at it 40 years, I mean, you worked hard for very little, then you didn't work very much for very much. But before we get too deep into this, let's recognize the best part of the show, which is the audience. So Ashif is here from Canada, Danny's here from England. So nice to see you. Cheryl's here from India, I believe. Catherine's here. Catherine's one of the best, and she'll be here Saturday with Leslie Flowers. Good morning. Protection is important. I wouldn't be without medical insurance for sure. Sheaf comes back with, it's better to be 5 years early than 5 minutes too late. So true. Here we go with another individual. Haven't seen you. Welcome. And then be covered with more than just a hospital bed. So with that said, Kelly, what's your new thoughts on this? And we'll turn it over to Tracy.
Yeah, well, as Sheev just said, not all hospital gowns really cover you as you should be anyways, but funny one, loved it. Kind of when you were just talking, Dawn, something that you said sparked the whole thing about insurance isn't always a policy or a thing. Like insurance can be, I always bring things back to community, and here is having people behind you as it does allow you to feel safe, supported, and you take more risk when you feel you've got that support, behind you. And so people in your life can sort of protective insurance for you to take more risk, if you will, to take it into a different spin. So that was my thought when you were saying that. And of course, I could 100% go down the full rabbit hole of insurance in general. But with that being said, I will turn it back over to Tracy.
Thank you. The one thing I was thinking of is I think that's funny about medical insurance because we all have to have it. It's 100% necessity, and nobody should go in America without it or anywhere else in the world. But I think people will cover their cars, they'll cover their houses and their medical, but they won't cover their life. They don't think of that or generational wealth. So that's the last thing they want to insure. So they'll go to all the other insurance companies and get a policy, but they should be covering their life, which is their greatest asset.
Mhm.
Well, and that's why shows like this are educational,
Mhm.
informative, because people don't know what they don't know,
That's right.
right? And they learn from whoever it is around them or wherever it is they grew up or whatever environment. But again, reevaluation. What
Yeah.
works for you at 20 isn't effective at 50. What's valuable at a certain age is not that valuable at another age. And I think a lot of people don't want to deal with the question of mortality,
Yes.
right? Because even like making a will, if we're talking about insurance, without a will, you leave a total mess if you have, and that should be the first thing is make sure things are protected, defined the way you feel it should be. And then what does everybody need? Because
Mhm.
I look at everything as passing the baton,
Hmm.
right? Why leave somebody, even when you downsize, the relief you have is no one has to do this after you, and you know how much work it is going through pictures and all the stuff that's in your attic and your basement. And it's just, you're almost glad to have it, but don't want to see it.
Mm-mm.
or definitely don't open it up and see it. So, it just gives you, I guess it's a matter of responsibility and accountability,
Mhm.
right? It's like, did they leave something for everybody else? Knowing, I think everybody agrees that the loss itself is huge. That
Mhm.
missing around the table, that empty chair, right? And now financial disaster
Oof.
that people are unprepared for and,
Yes.
and have a lifestyle that doesn't change in a minute, even though circumstances do. So I think it's really priorities too,
Mhm.
right? Maybe get a little bit less house and a little bit more insurance.
Mhm.
Truly.
and you find the money within the money to make it all fit again, right? With priorities changing. So with that said, Tracy, what's your thoughts on all this interaction from all these wonderful people?
I love it. I love seeing the comments. It's always nice to see them on the side. But yes, protection and one thing you were saying about going through your stuff, I'm going through that with my mom now because a
Mm.
neighbor of hers died and her son was out in the hallway crying because he didn't know what to do with it. So she started going through her stuff now. She's in her 80s. And I'm so thankful that I'm not going to be stuck with all this in multiple houses. So I'm helping her now, which is a lot better than helping later.
Mm-hmm.
It's always difficult to help later. And I say, one of the most difficult time periods in financial services, for me anyways, I was on the RIA side of the business for a while too, is during the market crash here in 7-8 was, horrendous. Um, and when people, not only does money bring out the worst in some people, it can bring out the best in some to do more good, but it definitely brings out the worst. And seeing families that when someone passed soon after that market crash, people lost 40% of their portfolios during that time period. Your 4% withdrawal rate needs to change because it's not hitting the same. But watching families when things aren't prepared the way that they should be, oh, I'll get around to doing the will, or I'll get around to doing the trust. Watching what that does, it's an eye-opening thing because it's a waste of so much money, energy, and because people start fighting each other and they can't access bank accounts maybe to pay for certain expenses, and those simple things of having a signer on your checking account so that they can write a check out and not have to wait until you know um, the state takes care of it if they haven't taken care of it properly. um, it's just that whole thing, I think, of what you were saying, Don, is have the conversation about, mortality, because it's scary. And it is interesting because that is the one thing, right, that we're all guaranteed. Like, we all know it's going to happen, but it's the one topic that we all like stay away from. But once you've seen a situation where it has been managed not badly, or maybe not even at all prepared for, and seeing what it can do to the surviving members of the family, as opposed to when it's taken care of, doesn't take away the pain by any means. Don't get me wrong there. It just doesn't add another layer of complexity and angst and uncertainty, because there's a lot of language, I think, that comes up, which is the reason why people need someone like you, Tracy, is to help them. It's a completely different lingo that goes on in life insurance, and understanding all those complexities that, for you are so seemingly simple. But that's another thing I think that turns people off, is they're like, ooh, I don't know what they're talking about, which makes me feel stupid. So I'm not ready to have this conversation. Because we don't like to feel dumb having a conversation about something, right?
I have to break it down and educate. If
Yeah.
I'm not educating, then I'm not my job.
Yeah.
You're 100% right.
Such a great thing. And there was a question about something, and I can't see it there now, but about being in an underserved.
Oh, there's insurance for all levels.
Yeah.
I mean,
Everyone.
Term for $17 a month. I mean,
There you go.
It's cost less than a cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So there is insurance for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that's the key with all the words we use is context, application, conditional. Everything's conditional and relative to something.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on your priorities and how you like to take care of business.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, insurance, again, is your family, especially your kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And if your kids are doing really well, and they look like they're going to be taken care of, that's one less risk anybody has to deal with,
mm-hmm.
right? Or insure.
And with that, Don, if you insure your children, they stay insurable the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So they can have a tragic, diabetes or heart attack. They're still insurable because they already went through and they don't even go through underwriting as juveniles. So they've already
That's right.
did it, and they never went through underwriting. So it's wonderful to get policies for children under 18, and as younger, the better. And then you can actually bank on your own policy. You don't have to go to a bank for a loan. You can go to your policy for a loan.
Right.
Yeah, and you see, that's why knowledge is power.
Mm-hmm.
And ignorance will keep you kind of where you're at for a long, long time. And the other thing, I think, to Tracy's point, what's good for you is good for people like you.
Yeah.
Right? So, if it's a good investment, and it's the same thing as an employer, right? If you're providing quality insurance, and today people will work just for insurance. I think that's why Starbucks has so many part-time people, is they figured out that's all they needed was insurance and a nice little atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think it's 16 or 20 hours and you get full insurance there.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the key is having respect for people's families' future, because that's really what you're insuring for. You might be insuring against something, but the for part is who are you providing for? So let's go through some more of these comments. Catherine says, okay, we talked about Catherine. I got up there. Jeff is here. Great to see you, Jeff.
Hey, Jeff.
Mike, I'll get back to it. Michael's here. I don't remember. I think you might have been here a little bit before. I work in the financial services industry. Very important to dot all your I's and cross all your T's. For sure. Sheaf says, once in my career, my position was covered on both ends. If I left, work out, and also if I stayed until retirement payouts. Smart family organizations knowing the value. values everything. That's what we're really talking about, and values that go with your value. Victoria, if anyone feels dumb because they don't know something, they have deeper issues in insurance. So true, Victoria. Thank you for hitting it on the nose. So, Tracy, an interesting collection of different people
Yes,
that we haven't seen, and kind of fascinating to get this interaction, huh?
it is. I'm enjoying it tremendously. And it's a lot easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, everybody thinks something until they actually do something and feel the something. But the nice thing is this is a well,
Old machine.
yeah, I mean, everybody's here 80-90%, I would say, about every day. And everybody comes here, for the community, for the knowledge share. It's not a salesy or self-promotional place. And it's a place that people learn so much from the people around them, not just from the people on the stage. So Kelly, I know your first experience mirrored
Oh,
Tracy.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I was definitely just hearing the word live makes you go, and it's not scripted. What do you mean? And back then we didn't even have a word. It was just we're going live and we don't have a clue what we're going to talk about. But but you're right. After you do, and I do tell this to everyone. I'm like, it's just like having a cup of coffee in your family room with a friend. Like it's just not. It doesn't have that feel that we imagine. It's like anything else, right? Our we imagine something so much worse than reality ever is. And most people will end up getting finished and be like, oh my gosh, when can I do it again? Or how can I implement this in my because it great way to implement your business is to do LinkedIn Lives, just saying. Because what a great way to educate people, for people to see you, get a feel for you. I think there's something that's even more trusted about a live as opposed to a produced video. Not saying produced videos are bad. I think they're fantastic and they definitely have their place and purpose. So I would never take away from that. It's just a nice little something else to add into your library of marketing, if you will, and or educating. I think it's just a pretty cool way to utilize the platform in that way. And I think more people finding out the live aspect and component and how it works and how it's like, wow, this is really actually so much easier than trying to do a podcast. That's what I was originally trying to do. And this was just such an easier way to get into the mainstream, if you will, and just being afterwards like, well, this was great. All I was myself. I mean, so we can't mess that up. And if we mess up, it's just part of who we are. I mean, we're humans. That's what we do. And I kind of thought another insurance thing that came up while you were talking, and I have no idea why, but you said something that reminded me of people. I used to go to Vegas a lot with friends. I'm not a big gambler. I don't like to lose money. And, but I remember people saying that like, I've got to hedge against this bet by making this other bet to offset my loss. So I just always thought that was funny. So you're betting on something you believe in, but then you're betting on something else in case it doesn't work. So you don't lose as much money. That just kind of, I don't know why I thought of that, but I just thought that was funny because that is definitely something that comes to the minds of people who do gamble on how I can, provide insurance to my betting habits.
Well, and I think that's so key is understanding what your risk quotient is, what you're comfortable with, because every day, every step is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't know what can happen from it or by it. People's lives change in an instant, both ways, good and bad. So the key is to, I think part of it is enjoying minimalism to a point where you don't need as much. And if you don't need as much, then, you can enjoy what you do have. I think also to everything that we're talking about, like with LinkedIn Lives, it's about branding.
Yeah.
It's about personal and professional branding, is showing yourself who you are as a person, who you are to interact with, right? So that that person, because it's all trust and likability. If you can develop that trust, and people like to do business with people they like to be with,
Yes.
and it's not every dollar either, because there's a value to service, there's a value to trust, and especially if you're insuring some of the most important things in your life, which is your family, I would think. You
Mhm.
want somebody who doesn't come back to you and say, whoops, we forgot that, or you didn't buy it, or whatever that. So I think it's peace of mind, not only what you just did, but who you just did it with.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you're not alone from the beginning or the end. And I can swear to you, I had agents through my business career that saved the business in so many ways.
Yeah.
Right? By identifying a risk factor and say, you need to get this insurance. I would have never known. I
Yeah.
bought it. I ended up needing it.
Business insurance is a big deal. And like you said, it retains employees.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because here's the thing. When you have employees to a point, you've got a responsibility beyond them to their family,
Correct.
right? And if they suffer a financial hardship, it's going to affect how they are on the job, or even if they can keep the job,
Mhm.
if they have to make a decision. But here's Catherine, who says, will you please talk a bit about long-term care insurance? I'm an RN by profession, and I've spoken to many people over the years that have thought that Medicare covered long-term care
Oh, no.
in the home. And that's the thing. How much, well, you can speak to that, Tracy. What's your thoughts?
It does not.
That's right.
They sell policies that are only in home, that you never have to go into a hospital or any other care unit. If you don't want to, you can stay in your home, and it even pays your caregivers to take care of you. But there's different long-term care policies, and there's different laws in different states. And they're about to mandate long-term care in more states, like they did in Washington State last year. California, New York, Florida, we're all talking about it right now. And pretty much it's going to be mandated by the federal government, because it's going to cost too much to the federal government if we all go have long-term care. So they need us all to have long-term care insurance. So that, like you said, the earlier you buy it, the better you are. And if you don't use it, you get the money back. So it's a use it or keep it, and pass it on, or take the money back. It's an easy choice. But if you have any other questions about long-term care, you can ask. If I didn't answer your immediate question,
Yeah,
Catherine.
and you can always use after the show.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of introducing new people with really quality skill sets, but mostly the human aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's really about good people here helping other good people do good. There's enough of everything else out there, and I think that the future is peer-to-peer support, working with the person you're next to who you can help, versus waiting for help that probably isn't quickly on its way. And that's why the future is going to be help yourself, and help yourself with other people helping each other,
Mhm.
where you're going to get some more safety, security, because it's not just, again, the financial side, it's the insight side. And by
Mhm.
sharing knowledge and stories, someone say, if it happened to them, why wouldn't it happen to me?
That's right.
And the other thing is, if you can pay an insurance bill and not worry about eating that day, then everything's covered, right?
Mhm.
You did your every day, and you prepared for the future. And I think the Kellys and Tracy's stories, what would have been the story if the opposite would have happened?
Yep.
That someone dropped a policy the month before because they wanted to save a few bucks or whatever, or didn't renew it, or whatever, and then all of a sudden, and they're gone, right? I mean, they have nothing more they can do that they've done. And now the family forever will be thinking, if he
What-
or she would have done that, we wouldn't be where we are today. And is that a legacy people want to leave behind? Because I can guarantee you, all your wonderful trinkets and things aren't going to pay the bills,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Everybody's worried who's going to get the gold watch and who's going to get the this and the that. That's meaningless. But anyways, that's why we're having these conversations, is to open our minds, question ourselves. And you know what? If you question yourself and take inventory and everything's cool, you're validated.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to get more than you need. You don't have to overinsure, right?
No, we have a program that actually tells you if you're overinsured.
Yeah, because it's really to get the right fit for the right person. Nobody wants to
Mhm.
you know, engage in that type of thing. Michael says to Catherine, yeah, so important. It's also important to get long-term care as soon as possible. Your future self will thank you. Well said. Sheaf, do you insure the goose or the golden eggs? Well, that's a
A goose.
Hey, maybe both. Catherine says, thank you. I appreciate your clarifying some of this for folks. And it's good to know that you're open to additional communication in the event they have more questions. Well,
Yeah.
absolutely. And as Chief says, smart acceptance insurance. Well, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
So Kelly, we're more than halfway through. It's just flying along.
It always does. I mean, it just always does. And I do think that's important. There's no way that we would ever be able to cover all things insurance, life insurance, long-term care in 1 hour by any means. And I think it's important, even with looking at what Catherine put up, you know, is long-term included in Medicare. Medicare in and of itself is its own animal. And there are so many different facets of that, and really understanding what that covers. And I do say that because I still do Medicare work for a client. And the change in the insurance industry is, you know, I have to do a whole rebranding for him because we can no longer use the word Medicare, which makes no sense to me at all. But that's happening effective in October. So I think that was an important thing to clarify long-term care. And the statement that I want to like restate, and for people to ask Tracy more questions about if they have it, is definitely the fact of, if you pay into it, if you don't use it, you don't lose it, that you get it back. Like, that is such a huge misconception of people thinking I'm going to pay into this and I don't have it. And I think another point that was made earlier is, when you do pay into a policy, you gain cash value in most policies, not all policies by all companies, but and you can take loans against that are at a much lower rate than if you were going to go to a bank and take out a loan. You know, it's not meant to be a saving vehicle, if you will. I think that was the phrase that was always, you know, never say that. But that you can borrow the cash value, which I always found was very interesting. And then saying about putting a small insurance policy on your kids. I mean, you get to a point where you don't have to pay for it anymore, and then it just continues to grow and grow and grow. So it kind of is one of those no-brainer investments. And that was something that, you know, my mom did for my brother and I after my dad died. And once we got to a certain age, it was like, well, now you guys can take over the payments. But then you get to a place where you don't have to pay it anymore, and it just continues to grow. So a small investment can make a big difference. And man, there are so many different scenarios. So, you know, your scenario doesn't match my scenario and anyone else. Why it's so important to have a Tracy in your life, so that you can get what works for you, because everybody's individual. And when I hear people say, well, I just got this, and it's like, well, but that's not what they need. They need something totally different, because their life circumstance or situation is completely different. So it's never an out of the box solution. And I think that's a lot of times that people think that, oh, well, it's just this one thing and I'm just going to pay for it. It's not customized. And
It's transactional.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think the whole thing is important. These are conversations, truthfully, that should be happening more often so that people aren't afraid to, because you don't know what you don't know. Like that's the other thing too, right? Is I don't even know what to ask because um I don't understand this and how it works. And that is when it's like, hey, I need a consultation with somebody. And then even to go on the part of when you hire an agent, um, because training salespeople and reps over the years, I always would say, you know what, people can go anywhere to buy this product that we have. They're buying you because it's about the connection, the trust, the time you take to really connect with your client and for them to feel safe. Anything that involves money, they have to feel that trust, confidence, and safety with the person that they do work with. I mean, I love that I can call my, my agent and just say, hey, with this change in the market, do I need to make any adjustments? And whatever he recommends, I'm always like, then I'm down. Let's do it. But I've had him for a long time, so I mean, I know that it's worked, and yeah, I just think there's so many conversations that need to continue off of this topic for sure.
Yeah, and I think these are important conversations, and that's why the word changes with pretty much the person or the theme of that day's show,
Mm.
because everybody needs focus.
Yeah.
Right? If you just go on a show and talk about and what you did, what you're going to do, and everything else, then what is the real takeaways?
Hmm.
I mean, if we're talking about value propositions, we've got to bring value wherever we go in the form that most people want to hear and accept. And I think that's so key is because it is the person, it is the trust, it is the likability, that makes the difference. Because at the end of the day, they say, a couple pennies off you'll always forget, but you'll never forget the quality of service someone gave you, right?
So true.
And I think that's in anything that you do is you always have an opportunity to promote something of value to somebody else. Yeah, that's why you picked it up. That's why you're the agent of it. You
Mhm.
could have chosen anything. Why would you ever choose a product or a service that you have to make excuses for? Or that that isn't going to do what people expected when
Yeah.
there's something right next to you that will. And
Yeah.
I think that's really what people have to understand is my time and my interest in you you can't put a price on it,
Mhm.
right? And I think about you after the premium paid, and what I insured. And I think that makes a difference. And I think knowing the people, having the time to know family names and situations,
Birthdays.
yeah, because then they know you were really listening and you didn't do it just for the transaction. And again, if you treat people right, they want to share that with people they care about. And that's how you build a business is, they say repetition builds reputation. And
Mhm.
the more you're seen, the more you're heard in your most natural state. Like you say, showing up in someone's living room. That's how you want to come to these shows is, hey, I'm just here to provide some service or help or share what I know. And then allow people to be smart enough to then say, yeah, I'll take the initiative to reach out to you because then it's more qualified versus just trying to chase or attract people. And I think that's what a lot of insurance people do
Yeah.
is it's spaghetti against the wall, especially on social media.
Mhm.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
cast a wide net and hey, whatever goes, it goes. Dennis says, who's our resident poet laureate, the right fit will fit. Natalie comes back with our family businesses in the LTC industry.
Oh.
It's a huge industry, and we must become informed with all of its many facets.
Yes.
Yeah, so true. And family businesses have special insurance needs
Mhm.
that some other businesses don't. And Natalie's just great. If you don't know Natalie, reach out and get to know her. And here's another superstar, Ann Bimbola.
Yes.
Not sure how to contribute, but just listening in to learn about insurance thing. No knowledge is lost. Always something to learn daily. And Ambimbola is in Nigeria and a constant attendee. So thank you, Ambimbola. So Tracy, this is coming up on almost another couple minutes. It's been a fascinating conversation. What's your thought towards the audience involvement?
I love their questions. I love the audience's involvement. It's a different brings a different aspect on, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And I think maybe something that would be um, good to maybe go over, and this is just my thoughts as we've been saying that in the comments, is Tracy, like if I am someone that's in the audience and I don't have life insurance, like where do I start and what do I do? What should I be looking for maybe?
Your budget and see where you have some free dollars, and then talk to an agent and then have them design different plans for your budget and give you different options. But sitting down with an agent or over a Zoom would be a critical step, and they can lead you through the process and educate you at the same time.
Which is so great.
Yes.
Yeah, 'cause I think, and we talked about it a little bit earlier too, is people's, what is it, their risk tolerance, and that's something that I think people forget about over time, because your risk tolerance when you're in your 30s is much different than when you're in your 70s. um, but always knowing that too, I think, and I've always recommended to people, go to your friends, who you are similar to, maybe in life, if you're in the same sort of, and ask them who they use.
Mhm.
Referrals to me have always been, what I push for people, because it's so hard. How do I know out of the tens of thousands of agents who to reach out to, that it's always a good idea to ask someone. And then also understanding that just because, Tracy's in Florida doesn't mean that she doesn't do insurance for people in all other states, because you can be licensed in multiple states, or you may not be licensed in multiple states. So there's so many, yeah. And just knowing, hey, I can reach out to someone. So I think this is a gift to so many, if they're not sure of what to do, to, reach out to Tracy and ask her. I mean, there's
Just ask me, yeah, send me a message. I'm open to anybody.
Yeah, and that's true. I've known Tracy for over 3 years now, and Tracy is who she is, and I think that in itself is a plus when you're thinking of something that you're not that aware of or need some more advice with. Is really, the more sophisticated everybody is, the easier everything happens.
Mhm.
Right? You'd rather be with someone who knows everything you're talking about, and maybe even a little bit more. And then it's, you're just having to share what it is versus why it is or
Mhm.
how it works. But you should also give yourself that credit, because if you're going to buy peace of mind, why not have total peace of mind and not leave? I think I did the right thing, but I'm really confused about a lot of stuff. But hey, they'll
Yeah.
take care of it. No, that's what you're paying for.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there are no dumb questions.
Mm-mm.
Never.
Yeah, and I think that's important, is don't try to be smarter than you are, or feel dumber than you are, just be who you are. And I think that's anybody, whether it's insurance or real estate, they just want to know the real you, and what makes you happy or satisfied,
Mhm.
right? And then they can fit you to the house or to the plan. And also, the other thing is, it's continuous, where things change. Right? If you start making a lot more money, that
Mm.
would have effect. If you have new needs that you didn't have before, additions to the family, things like that. And there's also something comforting in consultation when you're not even buying. Like every year, let's have a review.
I do yearly reviews.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful, because it isn't like, got you in, now who's next,
Yeah.
right? It's like, hey, I'm going to keep.
How can I help you? What are your problems? How are your children? It's an informative thing.
Yes. I think agents, and I mean, my stepdad, like I said, was in the business for over 40 years. his clients were his friends. And like when, because the most intimate things about, I mean, everything generally about, because their financial situation, their job, what's going on with their family, if there's been a divorce, if there's been a birth, if there's been, so it becomes such a special relationship too, which is wonderful. I mean, truthfully, and I which is why with an agent, it's like if you're not feeling the vibe with your agent, go talk to somebody else. I mean,
Leave. Yeah.
you don't have to stay. And you're not stuck if you go, oh my gosh, I made a bad choice and how I've done this. You can still go somewhere else and get it fixed. It's not something that's you're not stuck with it.
You're not married to it.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's just such a good point too to bring up the whole fact of you don't know what you don't know, and just you need somebody to help educate you. It's Tracy's career. She knows this because she does it day in and day out. We can't go Google it and learn it in an afternoon.
And you lose the experience.
Yeah.
Most of my insurance people, 25, 30, 35 years, you kind of grow up with them. Your families grow up with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know that they're going to do everything they can, if they can, to help you when you need a claim. And that's when the rubber meets the road. They say customer service is your best sales tool.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you get to show if your words rang true when now it's your turn to collect.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Right? And is there something to loyalty? Is there something to longevity? And a lot of insurance companies will base some of that. In the earlier days, there was a lot of that. It wasn't so mechanical sometimes with the numbers, and there was, some conversation that could take place. But I think that's the way relationships are, is give and take, and more importantly, understanding.
Correct.
When people say this is all I can do because this is how it is, and in a sense, that's what we're working with.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's the kinder thought when you do have an accident. Let's say you have a car accident. The last thing you want to do is have a fight with your agent about it.
Oh gosh.
Right? You already just got through with whatever it was, and now you're going to hear details of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's important, is how big are you in situations where a lot of people act small. And I think that's so important. Dennis says, cheers, 3 years, friends, and walk to talk together through the weather. Dennis, you're too much. Tracy has been chasing the news, so we won't lose. Thanks for sharing and caring. Natalie comes back with customer service is your best tool.
Amen.
And people are not sometimes, a lot of times shy about calling customer service, right? Or taking something back to a store that doesn't fit them or doesn't work for them anymore. So how that person is presented to makes all the difference. If someone says, I'll take that return, no problem, we'll get you out of here in 1, 2, 3, versus did you wear it? How long have you had it? After all, give it back to me. It's not worth the $7 to go through an interrogation. And that's the same thing with anything else. I used to always tell my customer service people, if you're going to do it fast and do it with a smile,
Yes.
and that's all you got to remember, sooner and happy. Because once you start saying, well, you don't really deserve it, but we're going to do it for you this time, you might as well just not. And plus, I said, it's not even your money. What are you fighting to keep? Money that you want to give back. But again, that's awareness, that's insight, that's really knowing what it feels like to be in other person's shoes and situation.
Empathy too.
Yeah. And that's what we always say. I know how you feel. I felt the same way. And then I found this out. Right? I'm with you. I was even worse than you if you think what you did was worse. And then everything changed. right? And it's the story of Kelly and the story of Tracy that someone says, wow, because everybody wants to hear your story, not so much tell you their story, right? Because oh, if you can do it, maybe I can do it. But if you tell me about it, I'm not obligated to have to do it if you told me directly. And I think the last thing anybody needs is judgment.
Oh, amen.
Whatever it is, whether you agree with it or don't, it's not you, it's them. And always what's in it for them. And, even I used to say the worst customer has some good friends.
Yeah.
Right? So if you take care of somebody who they thought would never be taken care of, they'll refer you just because of the story.
Yeah.
There was one story of Nordstrom's when they first opened in the Northwest. And they had such a liberal return policy, and somebody took back a set of tires, and then someone says, we don't even sell tires here.
That's always been a joke with them, though, because they honestly take anything back, no matter how long. They have the best return service of any company I've ever known.
Well, they pride themselves on that, to know that they're insuring everything.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying it's on us. If it's a good deal, keep it. If it's a bad deal, you'll get your money back. And they all know how many people take it back and what it cost them. And they also know the manufacturer will probably credit them anyways.
Mm-hmm.
That's like when in golf, we used to have hole-in-ones and we give away cars. Well, that was just all insurance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in different kind of insurance, but still.
Right.
And nobody's ever said to me when I gave them a death check, oh, you gave me too much.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. They're always just like, thank you so much for doing all you did.
Mm-hmm.
It's a horrible experience, but you do have to go through it to mature.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's what people don't fully understand is the comprehensiveness of a quality agent. That it isn't just, there during good times or when the money's flying around, but is there for comfort. And, in a sense, they're fulfilling an obligation they made to the person who bought the plan and passed.
Yes.
That I'll continue to represent you and support you and your family after you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the full package of all the education and advocacy beginning and during, and then the follow through at the end. And that widow or that child will say, yeah, because Tracy was like this, I would definitely recommend her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's the feeling you leave in people. It's not the check. I mean, the check is the check, and it's nobody, like I say, says it's too large, but it's the thought that went with it. It's the delivery, the packaging, the presentation, sitting down, having a cup of coffee, enjoying a little bit of just relaxation. I think what most people need is time after any loss, not just the money, and they need someone to care.
Yes.
And to be there to say, hey, here's my number, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can call me, blah, 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 whatever it is, and you feel better. And again, very few people always call you more, but when they do, you're glad they do.
Oh, it touches my heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I would think. And that's how you project. Again, how do you put a value on that? Because what you're insuring actually is better mental health for the survivors, right? That they now have a little hope. They have somebody there who helped their dad or their mom or put something together for them, and now they're representing them, and I think that's important. So it's really, the personality as well as the profession that go hand in hand. And if you love people, you're actually doing them a favor from beginning to end if you are that individual like Tracy. So, come to the end of an hour, it sure flies by, but it sure is heartfelt, and with that said, so Tracy, what can you say, your final words with insurance and how your first experience here was? I keep saying that.
Thank you so much, Don and Kelly, for having me on today. I love educating on insurance, and I'm happy to take follow-up questions Again, my name is Tracy Riley. It's on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I appreciate Don very much.
you bet. We're good friends. And Kelly, we're great friends too. And this was interesting. Whoever Kelly comes on with always shines more, always does better. Kelly's so thoughtful and promotional towards people. I also want to say you got to check out Kelly's awesome journey with Christy. And it's a great show. Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And
Yeah.
this show's here every day, so feel free to come here 11 a.m. And with that said, hopefully we'll have Tracy back, and reach out to Tracy, check out her profile. If there's alignment, make a connection and have a conversation. I mean, it's a great opportunity to learn a lot from somebody who knows a lot. So with that said, everybody have a wonderful day ahead. Kinga's here tomorrow, and we'll talk again. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yeah.